Right now, those trade deals for Australia appear to be doing very nicely, thanks to demand for Australian raw materials from China and India. And while the signs are there that this boom part of the cycle will be with us for the next decade or more, times and challenges change. Some argue we should be thinking more about the future, the shape of the economy in 20 or 30 years' time, and start a sovereign wealth fund to meet future challenges. Dr. Michael Power is a strategist with the specialist bank and asset manager Investec, based in Cape Town. He joined me in the studio earlier. Dr. Michael Power, welcome to Lateline Business.
Nice to be here.
Now, you are calling for a sovereign wealth fund in Australia. That's quite separate from the future fund that we already have.
Absolutely. It's very much a model that the likes of Abu Dhabi and Norway, Chile, actually I think Nauru was the first place in the world to have a sovereign wealth fund. And the idea is essentially to ring-fence some of your foreign exchange reserves and to invest them wisely for the children of Australia.
So this is actually using the boom we've got at the moment to actually then...
Absolutely, and I mean, it's the good times when you should be thinking about these sorts of things. You're in quite literally a lucky country at the moment, and it's right to be thinking about the longer term implications of that.
How would this, in your view, actually work, the mechanics of it?
Well, I mean, very much in the same way that it does in Abu Dhabi, Norway, Chile, and the other places in the world that have one. Essentially, the central bank is involved in the process of actually overseeing the flows of capital into the economy, even in the current market, and some of those flows are essentially ring-fenced and put into a sovereign wealth fund. It takes time to build it up. Those are then invested very much on a private sector basis. I mean, the whole approach of the likes of ADIA, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, is very private sector, and they invest very wisely as long-term fund managers for the benefit of tomorrow's children.
When you say ring-fenced, I mean, we already have a mining tax that will probably be creaming off quite a lot of funds from our resource profits. Now, that's already, of course, pegged to other spending.
But that's inside the country. This is essentially the flows that are coming in from abroad. And the difference between the likes of a future fund is the future fund is essentially denominated in Aussie dollars, and a sovereign wealth fund is essentially a non-Aussie dollar fund.
If we don't do this, do you worry about Australia post a boom, a resources boom?
I still go back to that wonderful quote which The Economist said, that you are the best country in the world for dealing with adversity and the worst for dealing with booms. And I think that's still one of the problems with Australia. I still think that you've got a great central bank. It's one of the best central banks in the world. And I think that now is the time to really think about setting yourselves up for tomorrow.
Yeah, occasionally we do hear about the Dutch disease, don't we?
Yes, and that's the problem. And one of the ways that a sovereign wealth fund does is it sort of inoculates you against the worst effects of a Dutch disease. Essentially, it does involve a certain amount of intervention in the foreign exchange markets. That's what a sovereign wealth fund is. But it does mean then that the Aussie dollar probably would not appreciate quite as fast as it is at the moment. It would offer some respite to the industrial sectors of Australia that are trying to compete with cheap imports or indeed try and export their products. And the Dutch disease is something which resource-rich countries all over the world are having to contend with at the moment. Some countries talk about it all the time. If you go to Brazil now, it's pretty much the major topic of conversation.
All year I've been hearing comments from certain corporate leaders about the lack of foreign investment in Australia. We've got Treasury advice over the weekend calling for an overhaul of the foreign investment regime, and also noting that the OECD wants to extend the investment threshold agreed in terms of investments into Australia to the level of US investments. Do you agree with that? Would that make a difference?
I don't think it can be the case. You're running a current account deficit, and yet the Aussie dollar is appreciating. By definition, that must mean you have a capital account surplus, and in fact one that's greater than your current account deficit. That capital account surplus can only come from net foreign inflows of investment. So you are receiving a lot of investment at the moment. Exactly where it's going to, and perhaps it's not going to all the right areas, and that's part of the debate, is different. I think your resource sector obviously has been overwhelmed by interest from outside of Australia, and I think that's likely to continue. Again, it's a question of dealing with a problem of success, not a problem of failure.
I should talk about the Forbes conference, because there's a rather controversial article in the Forbes magazine from a week or so ago claiming that President Obama, is the most anti-business president in a generation. And I quote, "The US is being ruled according to the dreams of a Luo tribesman, anti-colonial." Do you see any truth in this?
I think it's a little bit of Forbes puff at the moment. One has to remember, of course, that George Bush Jr. oversaw the nationalisation of the mortgage sector, the banking sector, the insurance sector, and the auto sector. Hardly the actions of an out-and-out capitalist. The language of who's capital and who's communist and who's whatever in today's world has changed very dramatically. And even, I dare I say, the Republicans in the United States have become very interventionist in their economy, a lot more interventionist than historically they've been. That said, there is something in what that article says, and I do think that Obama has heard that, and I suspect that, for instance, in terms of the replacement of the Council of Economic Advisors head to replace Larry Summers, you'll probably see a very pro-business candidate be put forward.
Dr. Michael Parr, thank you very much for joining Lateline Business.
Nice to be here. Thank you.